The rain had been falling for 3 days straight, as if the sky itself mourned something it could no longer name. The map on Dr. Elara Finch's desk shimmered faintly under the flickering desk lamp, its edges curling like old skin. It was a surveyor's chart from 1871, unremarkable except for the faint pencil markings no one else seemed to notice. 10 towns, 10 names, 10 places that, according to every official record she could find, had never existed. Elara had spent 15 years studying abandoned settlements, places that time and people had decided to erase. But these 10 names, Hollowmere, Dreth's Ford, Silvershade, Grayley, and others written in a careful hand, were different. There were no census entries, no deeds, no graves, no ruins. It was as if someone had drawn them onto the earth, then wiped them away like chalk. She only found the map because an anonymous envelope arrived at the university's archaeology department with no return address. Inside was the map, folded neatly, and a single note. Find what silence remembers. At first she laughed. Pranks weren't unusual for someone who lectured about ghost towns. But the handwriting on the note was elegant, looping, Victorian perhaps, and the paper bore a faint smell of iron and smoke. It didn't feel modern, and when she examined the parchment under UV light, she found faint symbols drawn in a spiral around each of the missing towns, like runic chains. That night she couldn't sleep. The rain whispered against her window, and every sound in her old house seemed amplified. The ticking clock, the faint hum of the refrigerator, the wind through the vents. She kept thinking about the phrase, "Find what silence remembers." By dawn, she had decided to go. It took her 2 days to reach the region the map outlined, a forested expanse between two forgotten mining counties. Locals she asked at roadside diners just frowned. "Hollowmere?" one old man said, stirring his coffee. "No, can't say I've heard of it, but there's something out that way, someplace the GPS won't map. I don't go there anymore." When she asked why, he only muttered, "Because things whisper your name there." Elara laughed nervously. "You mean like an echo?" He looked at her, eyes clouded. "No, miss. Like something that's been waiting a long time to remember you." She left a few bills on the counter and drove off before he could say more. By the time she reached the edge of the forest, her cell service vanished. The trees were impossibly tall, draped in moss that swayed like cobwebbed curtains. She parked near an old trailhead, shouldered her pack, and began walking. The air smelled of wet earth and rust. After an hour, she found the first sign, literally. Half buried in the mud, a warped wooden plank read, "Welcome to Hollowmere, SD 1839. But behind it, there was nothing. No road, no ruins. Just an open clearing filled with waist-high grass and silence so deep it pressed against her eardrums. Elara's pulse quickened. She unpacked her camera and began documenting, taking soil samples and GPS readings. Everything recorded perfectly, except for the audio. Each time she played back a clip, all she heard was faint static. No birds, no wind, no footsteps. As though the world itself refused to acknowledge she had been there. Then she saw the outline of a building, faint as a shadow burned into the air. It flickered like heat haze. A small chapel, roof collapsed, bell tower leaning. She blinked, and it was gone. But in the place it had stood, the grass was flattened, as if by invisible weight. She swallowed hard. "Okay," she whispered. "I'm not hallucinating. This is atmospheric resonance, maybe? Some visual echo from humidity?" Her voice trembled. The air didn't answer. When she turned to leave, she noticed her footprints behind her. only half of them remained. The rest had already filled with grass. Back at her motel that night, Elara pored over her notes. The GPS data was corrupted. The map coordinates now read all zeros. Every photograph came out blurry except one, a single frame where the chapel's door was visible. And carved into it, faintly, were letters spelling her own name. She couldn't sleep. At 3 a.m, she received an email from an unknown address. The subject line read, "You've opened one." No message, no attachments. Her hands shook as she deleted it, but a moment later, the lights flickered and her laptop screen blinked back on by itself. The email had reappeared, except now the body contained one sentence. "The second town awaits the one who listens." The next morning, Elara followed the map north toward Dreth's Ford, an area marked by a faded river. The locals warned her that the bridge there had collapsed decades ago. Yet when she reached it, she saw a structure standing, rickety but whole, its timbers slick with dew. It looked far too old to exist. When she touched the railing, her hand came away black with soot. Crossing it felt like walking through a dream. The air on the other side was colder, and the forest seemed to hum with faint vibrations, like 1,000 voices beneath the ground. She saw more of those flickering outlines, houses, wells, and fences, and at the center, a library, or something that once was one. Inside, the walls were scorched, books lay in heaps of ash. Yet when she brushed one open, the pages were blank except for a single phrase burned into the center. "We remember when the world forgets." Then came the whisper, faint, feminine. "Elara." Her breath caught. "Who's there?" Silence. Then the faint creak of floorboards, though she stood alone. Something moved in the ash beside her, a shape rising like smoke. She stumbled backward, snapping photos wildly. The figure was only half-formed, its face smudged, like an unfinished sketch. Yet its eyes, they looked almost human. "You shouldn't be here," it said. Elara's voice cracked. "What are you?" "We were places once," it said, voice breaking like glass. "We were names on tongues. We were homes and laughter and dust. And then the map makers forgot us. The world moved on, but memory doesn't die." The ash stormed upward, and suddenly she saw flashes. Families in doorways, a market square, a bell tolling. Then fire, screams, silence. And then just as quickly, everything was gone. Elara woke outside the library ruins with no memory of how she'd gotten there. Her phone's battery was drained. She found in her coat pocket another note, this one written in the same elegant hand as before. 3 remain. Do not look back. Her rational mind screamed that she should leave, but curiosity, that old academic hunger, had her in its grip. Each town seemed to appear only for her. Perhaps they existed in some overlapping time or dimension, triggered by her presence. Or perhaps she was losing her mind. Still, she pressed on to Silvershade, the third town. The air here shimmered silver under the overcast sky. She could feel the boundaries between moments thinning, as though the years themselves had worn out. In the center of Silvershade stood a well. She felt drawn to it, heart thudding. When she peered inside, she saw not water, but reflections. Dozens of faces looking up at her. Some were hers at different ages, some were strangers. All were whispering the same thing. "You were here before." Her knees weakened. "No," she whispered. "I wasn't."
The reflection of her own face smiled back, lips moving on their own. "You always return. You write our names. You forget. Then you come again." She stumbled back, trembling. The note's words, "Find what silence remembers," echoed through her mind like a verdict. That night, she found an old church record in a nearby museum archive. Hidden among the handwritten documents was a name, Elara Finch, a 19th century surveyor who vanished while charting settlements in that region. He'd been hired to map new townships, but his final entries described something strange. The towns move, he wrote. Each one appears as I name it, but fades when I rest. I fear I am building a country of ghosts. Elara stared at the surname, Finch. Her own. Was it coincidence? A trick of lineage? Or something older? Some echo of him surviving through her, bound to the task he never finished. Her pulse raced as she turned the final page. The last entry read, "If any blood of mine follows these lines, tell them the truth. We are the builders and the built." She slammed the book shut. By the time she reached the fourth town, Grayley, the air itself seemed heavier. The road curved endlessly, the forest pressing closer. She began hearing faint melodies, like music boxes turning underwater. At the town center, she saw it, a clock tower half submerged in fog, ticking soundlessly. Around it, shadows of people moved, transparent, repeating the same motions again and again, sweeping, walking, pointing to the clock. But their faces were blurred. One turned toward her, and suddenly, all the others froze. "Elara Finch," in a dozen overlapping voices. "You are late." She backed away. "I don't understand. What do you want?" "To finish the map." The ground quaked. The fog thickened until she couldn't see her hands. Images flickered before her eyes, of her ancestor, Elias, standing in this very place, pen trembling as he drew the towns into being. Every mark gave life, every erased line condemned one to silence. He hadn't discovered these towns, he had created them. And by remembering them, Elara was calling them back. The realization hit her like a blow. She fell to her knees, gasping. "I didn't mean to." "It is already done," the voices said. The map opens as it closes. She looked down to see her notebook trembling in her hands, pages turning on their own. Ink bled across them, forming new names, new towns, her own handwriting. By the time she reached the fifth site, her car was gone, vanished from the trailhead as if it had never existed. She walked for what felt like days, following only the compass needle spinning in circles. Finally, she came upon a vast plain of blackened soil. No trees, no grass, just a stone obelisk standing alone, cracked and ancient. On it, faint words read, "Finch Haven, founded and forgotten." Her stomach dropped. Her name again. This was the last town. When she touched the stone, warmth surged through her. The ground pulsed beneath her boots, like a heartbeat. Around her, forms began to emerge, buildings rebuilding themselves, streets knitting from dust. Children's laughter echoed faintly. The town was coming alive. Then she saw him. A man in old surveyor's clothes, face gaunt but familiar. Elara Finch. He smiled, sad and weary. "I thought you'd never come." Elara stepped closer, tears blurring her vision. "Are you real?" "As real as memory allows." "I drew too much. I wanted to preserve what others destroyed, but each line bound a soul. When the world forgot these towns, they fell into silence. Only our blood could wake them again." "I don't want this," she said. "I just wanted to understand." "Understanding is the final act of creation," Elias whispered. "And now it is your turn." The town pulsed brighter, swallowing the horizon. Every shadow stretched toward her, murmuring her name. She felt ink seeping into her skin, patterns forming across her arms, lines, roads, symbols, the map. Elias reached out, touching her forehead. "The world forgets Elara, but we, Finches, we are its memory." Then everything dissolved into light. 3 months later, a hiker found an old notebook wedged beneath a cairn of stones near the abandoned forest trail. Inside were hand-drawn maps, 5 towns, carefully labeled, beautifully inked. But when historians cross-referenced the names, none matched any known location. The hiker turned the last page and froze. The handwriting changed mid-sentence, looping into something newer, sharper. It read, "The map remembers now."
and so do I. Beneath it was a fresh signature, Dr. Elara Finch. The ink was still wet.